she has just mated. Now she tightens her coils around the male still pressed against her, and slowly, deliberately, she crushes the life out of him, then begins to swallow the animal that fathered her young. This is the green anaconda, the heaviest snake on Earth, a body longer than a car and heavier than 3 grown men. And almost nothing about it behaves the way you'd expect a snake to behave. The females dwarf the males. They give birth underwater. Some breed with no male at all. And until recently, science didn't even know exactly what this animal was. Most people think they already know the green anaconda. It's the monster of the flooded Amazon, the thickest, heaviest snake alive, a river brute that drowns its prey and swallows it whole. Guinness lists it as the heaviest snake in the world, and that part is true. A big female can be as thick as a human thigh and weigh more than a person. It isn't the longest snake alive. A big reticulated python in Southeast Asia beats it for sheer length, stretching further than any anaconda ever measured. But length and weight are 2 different records, and for weight, nothing else on Earth comes close. The anaconda wins by mass, not by reach, and confusing the two is exactly where much of the myth begins. Stories go further, of course. Skins measured at 9 or 10 meters, snakes long enough to cross a road twice over, almost none of those giants hold up. The truly enormous lengths come from stretched hides, panicked estimates, and second-hand accounts that no one measured with a tape. Here's the first thing that should bother you. This animal is famous for being the biggest, and yet its real record size is one of the least reliable numbers in herpetology. The reason isn't mystery, it's the body. An anaconda is built for water, not for stretching out on a lab bench, and its record comes from mass, not length. It's short and unbelievably heavy, a shape that only makes sense if you stop picturing a snake on land and start picturing one hanging weightless in a river where its own bulk costs it almost nothing. If we can't even trust how big it gets, it's worth asking what else we've gotten wrong. A lot, as it turns out. Start with the most basic question of all. What is a green anaconda? For 2 centuries, the answer seemed obvious. One species, Unectes murinus, spread across northern South America. Then, in 2024, a team led by anaconda biologist Jesus Rivas published a study in the journal Diversity that broke that picture apart. The green anacondas of the Orinoco Basin in the north and those of the Amazon in the south aren't the same animal. They're 2 separate species that split from a common ancestor almost 10 million years ago, now formally divided into the southern green anaconda and a newly named northern one, Unectes acaima. 10 million years is not a small gap. The 2 lineages carry about 5.5% genetic difference between them. To put that in perspective, the genetic distance between humans and chimpanzees is roughly 2%. By that measure, these snakes are far more distinct from each other than we are from apes. And yet you could hold one in each hand and see no difference at all. Same green-black coloration, same blunt head, same heavy coils. This is what biologists call a cryptic species, one that hides in plain sight because evolution reshaped its genes without touching its appearance. The niche stayed the same, so the body had no reason to change. Untangling that took the better part of 2 decades. The work behind the 2024 paper drew on years of fieldwork across 9 countries. Snakes caught and sampled by hand in remote rivers, their DNA read and compared line by line. On paper, the animals matched. In their genes, they didn't. And the deeper the team looked, the wider the gap grew, until it was too large to keep calling them one species. The surprise wasn't that a new anaconda had been hiding somewhere unexplored. It was that the most studied giant snake on the continent had been 2 species sitting in the open, separated only by a river system and 10 million years that nobody had thought to check for. Not everyone accepts the split yet. Some herpetologists argue the evidence for a full, separate species still needs more work, and that debate is ongoing. But the deeper point stands. The single most recognizable giant snake on the planet was quietly two animals the whole time, and almost no one noticed. If the identity of this creature was that unstable, its private life is stranger still. Starting with something you can actually see the moment you compare a male and a female. They barely look like the same species. Female green anacondas are not slightly larger than males. They are giants beside them. A large female can outweigh a male many times over, dwarfing him so completely that early observers sometimes assumed the small males were a different kind of snake entirely. This runs against the instinct most of us carry, that the biggest, most dangerous animal in the room is male. Here it's the opposite, and the reason cuts to the core of how this snake makes more of itself. Size in a female anaconda is not about dominance or fighting, it's about babies. A bigger female can carry more young and bigger young, and in a world where reproduction is brutally expensive, every extra kilogram of her body converts into reproductive output. Males don't need to be huge. They need to find females and reach them fast. So selection pushed the sexes in opposite directions. She grew enormous. He stayed small and mobile. That single split explains far more of this animal's behavior than its reputation for strength ever could. Which brings us to the strength, because that's the part everyone assumes is the whole story. The green anaconda is a constrictor, and a devastating one. It takes capybaras, the world's largest rodents. It takes caimans, armored relatives of crocodiles, dragging them under at the water's edge. And the killing itself is more precise than the word crushing suggests. An anaconda doesn't break bones or squeeze the breath out of prey in the way old films imply. It tightens with each exhale of the victim and cuts off blood flow, stopping circulation to the heart and brain. Death comes fast, faster than suffocation, a controlled shutdown rather than a slow crush. Finding the prey in the first place is its own quiet trick. An anaconda's eyes and nostrils sit high on the top of its head, so it can lie almost completely submerged, with only a sliver of face above the surface, watching the bank while the rest of its body disappears into the murk. It doesn't chase. It waits, sometimes for hours, tasting the water and air with a flicking tongue that reads the chemical trail of anything that came down to drink. When a capybara or a caiman steps too close, the strike comes upward out of the water, faster than a body that size should be able to move, and the coils are around the animal before it understands what the river just did. Then begins the slow work of swallowing something wider than the snake's own head, the jaws walking forward over the prey on loosely hinged bones. Taking a caiman is not a safe meal. These are armored, sharp-jawed animals that can fight back and injure a snake badly, which is why the ambush has to be decisive, the coils locking down before the caiman can twist around and bite. A miscalculation can leave the anaconda scarred or dead. That risk is part of why it hunts the way it does, trading long chases for a single overwhelming strike from cover, exposing itself for as little time as possible. One large meal can carry it for weeks, sometimes months, which is exactly what an ambush predator needs, because it may not get another easy chance for a long while. So the raw power is real, but power is the least surprising thing about this animal, and it explains almost nothing about the behavior that makes biologists stare. To see that, you have to watch what happens when the small males finally reach the giant female, because that's where the green anaconda stops resembling anything familiar. During the breeding season, a female doesn't pair off with a single mate. She becomes the center of a writhing tangle, sometimes called a breeding ball, a knot of males that can hold on for weeks. each one competing not by fighting the others, but by positioning, endurance, and persistence. As many as a dozen males can pile onto a single female at once, and she may barely move for the entire stretch, dragging the whole tangle with her when she does. There is no duel, no clear winner in the way we'd script it. The female holds the power throughout. She is larger than all of them combined in some cases, and she decides how this ends. Sometimes it ends in a way that would be unthinkable for most animals. She eats one of them. In documented cases, a female green anaconda has strangled a male that just mated with her and swallowed him whole. For years, this was known only from a handful of scattered field reports, easy to dismiss as freak events. Then, a photographer named Luciano Candesani captured it on Brazil's Formoso River, one of the only times the act had ever been recorded on camera. A male, alive one moment, then wrapped and killed and consumed by the very female he'd fathered young with. It sounds like cruelty, and it's tempting to narrate it that way. The evidence points somewhere colder and more practical. A pregnant female anaconda pays an enormous price for reproduction. Something like a third of her body weight goes into producing her young, and she may fast for around 7 months while she carries them, eating nothing at all. Against that backdrop, a large male is not a partner. He is 7 or 8 kilograms of meat arriving at the exact moment she needs it most. Eating him isn't rage. It's an investment in the babies he just helped create. We don't fully know how often it happens in the wild, and the motive is an inference rather than a proven fact, but the logic fits the animal's brutal reproductive economics. And those young don't arrive the way a snake's young are supposed to. Ask most people how snakes reproduce, and they'll say eggs buried in warm sand or leaf litter left to hatch alone. The green anaconda does none of that. It gives live birth in the water, delivering a litter that can run to a few dozen fully formed babies that swim away on their own from the first minute of life. Each one is a miniature of the adult, self-sufficient immediately, slipping into the shallows before a predator can find it. And most of them will be found anyway. A litter might number 20, 30, sometimes more, but the newborns are small enough to be prey for wading birds, caimans, larger fish, even other snakes, and only a fraction will survive their first year. The mother gives no care once they're born. Her investment ended at delivery, poured entirely into making them and getting them out alive. The large litter is her answer to that gauntlet, a bet that if she produces enough of them, a few will slip through. Carrying live young inside her body instead of laying eggs makes sense for an animal that spends its life in water, where a buried clutch would drown or rot, and where a warm-blooded nest is impossible. She becomes the incubator, keeping the developing young at a stable temperature and shielding them from the endless predators of the flooded grassland until the moment they're ready. It also raises the stakes of everything we've just seen. If motherhood costs this much, the drive to eat a mate stops looking like an anomaly and starts looking like part of the same equation. But even that isn't the strangest thing this animal can do, because in at least one case, a female managed the whole thing without a male in the first place. In 2019, at the New England Aquarium in Boston, a green anaconda named Anna gave birth. That alone wouldn't be remarkable, except Anna had never been housed with a male. She lived in an all-female exhibit. Genetic testing confirmed what the keepers suspected. The offspring carried only their mother's DNA. Anna had reproduced through facultative parthenogenesis, a kind of virgin birth in which a female produces young without any fertilization at all, and the babies are essentially half clones of herself. Let that sit against everything the anaconda is supposed to be. We've spent this long assuming 2 animals are needed to make a third. that the male's role is fixed and essential. This snake can, under the right conditions, skip him entirely. It's been documented in captivity, and we genuinely don't know how often, if ever, it happens in the wild, because a wild birth like that would be almost impossible to catch and confirm. Absence of proof isn't proof it never happens. What we can say is that the option exists, built into the animal's biology. So step back and look at the pile of oddities we've collected. An animal we can barely measure. A single famous snake that turned out to be 2 species. Females that eclipse males, eat their mates, carry live young underwater, and can sometimes reproduce alone. Listed out like that, it reads like chaos. A creature assembled from unrelated freak traits. It isn't. Nearly every one of these things is the same answer to the same problem, and the answer is water. The green anaconda is not really a jungle brute. It's an aquatic ambush specialist, and almost everything strange about it flows from that one commitment. Water is what lets a female grow so heavy that she'd struggle to move efficiently on land, because in the river her own weight is supported and her bulk becomes an advantage instead of a burden. Water is why she bears live young instead of laying eggs. Water is the ambush platform, letting a massive animal vanish beneath a few centimeters of murky surface and wait, nearly invisible, for a capybara or a caiman to step within reach. The size, the reproduction, the hunting style, all point back to a life lived mostly submerged. But the same specialization that built this animal also traps it. A giant, water-dependent ectotherm is powerful in exactly one setting and vulnerable everywhere else. On dry land, the anaconda is slow and exposed. Its bulk, suddenly a liability. It depends on the flood cycles of wetlands and grasslands that fill and drain with the seasons. And when those waters shrink, so does its world. Drain the marshes, alter the rivers, push a drought a little longer than usual, and you strike at the exact thing the whole body was optimized around. The trait that makes it a giant is the same trait that ties its survival to water it doesn't control. People make it worse in more direct ways. Anacondas are killed for their skins, and killed far more often out of plain fear, dispatched on sight by anyone who assumes a snake that size must be a danger. In reality, a healthy adult human is not anaconda prey, and verified cases of one killing a person are extraordinarily rare, far rarer than the legends insist. The real threat runs the other direction. The animal needs large stretches of undisturbed wetland and a steady supply of big prey, and both of those are the first things to vanish when people move in. And now that we know there are 2 species, even protecting it has become harder than it looks. Because the northern and southern green anacondas are physically identical, any conservation plan built on the old idea of one wide-ranging species may have been quietly mismanaging 2. A population that looks healthy across the whole continent could hide a lineage in trouble in one basin, invisible because we've been counting 2 animals as one. The 2024 split isn't just a taxonomic footnote. It changes what a healthy anaconda population even means. And that's before the scientific community has fully agreed the split is settled. So test the title against everything we've seen. Nothing about the green anaconda is normal, but not because it's chaotic or random. Each strange trait solves a real problem. The females are huge because size means more young. They eat mates because motherhood nearly starves them, and a male is a meal. They bear live young because eggs don't work underwater. They can sometimes reproduce alone because the biology allows a fallback. They split into cryptic species because 10 million years of separation reshaped their genes while their bodies had no reason to change. There's no single secret. There's a set of interlocking answers, all bending toward water and reproduction. what's actually abnormal here isn't the snake, it's our expectations. We assumed the biggest animal would be male, that two parents are always required, that snakes lay eggs, that one obvious species meant one actual species. The anaconda never agreed to any of that. It follows a consistent internal logic that simply isn't built around mammals or males or the tidy categories we bring to it. Picture those two anacondas again, gliding through the same brown water, close enough to touch, wearing the same skin. To your eye, one animal. In reality, two lineages holding a 10 million year gap between them, still hunting the same prey, the same way, in the same rivers, unaware they've become a scientific argument. We still don't know their true maximum size. We don't know how often a wild female skips the male entirely. We're not even fully agreed on where one species ends and the other begins. The green anaconda spent 200 years being famous for the one thing about it we could see. And almost everything that actually matters was hidden under the surface the whole time, waiting in the dark water for someone to finally look.